Hello, my
Hey
people,
God, it
and
don't bust,
welcome
it
back to
don't
Ada
red.
Universe TV. My people, wahala dey o. If you know, so now the first time we they come across my video, be this, you never subscribe. Hit that button when it says subscribe. If you don't already subscribe, I say thank you, God bless you now. I no go waste una time. And when make una dive enter inside this video, make una tell me what una take for the comment section. I go see una give my next video, guys. Thank you and God bless. Bye.
Fine. Yeah, one of the attorneys involved in fighting against the abuse of human rights of activists in the IPO family, as we call them, the indigenous people of Biafra. And you are in Nigeria today after you were denied access to Nnamdi Kanu. We can call him your client.
Yes, correct.
By the department known as the State Security Services in Nigeria, but they self-style themselves as the Department of State Services. So we call them DSS as a result. But their real name is DSS. I think when they discovered that they started acting like the Hitlerites in Germany, the SSS or that
Right,
era,
yes.
they tried to change, but they haven't characteristically changed. So what happened yesterday? Just tell people what was your encounter like for the first time when Nigerians saw with this major security behemoth known as the SSS.
I'd like to begin by underscoring that we did everything according to the judge's order, which permits Nnamdi's lawyers to visit on Mondays and Thursdays. The order is categorical. It doesn't say we need to be escorted or, it's dependent upon any particular presence of the DSS at the facility. And adequate notice was given by Ejiofor that I would be one of the two lawyers to visit Nnamdi on Thursday to discuss his legal case, which has enormous ramifications, not only for Biafra and Nigeria itself, but internationally, since it involves, among other things, the kidnapping and torture of someone who's then later detained. So we drove to the facility, I did with Ejiofor. It's not all that what I would call user-friendly. You see people carrying very, very advanced weapons on your way into the facility. But they didn't disturb us. We went and we checked in, as was proper. Didn't make any noise or commotion. We went and sat in a waiting room. Ordinarily, it's about 5 minutes before you're permitted to see the individual you're authorized to consult. And after about 15 or 20 minutes, a gentleman entered and announced, not very convincingly, that the person who was supposed to escort us down the hallway was on a special assignment, and therefore we couldn't visit with Nnamdi. Now, he didn't say that with much conviction, and moreover, the plausibility of that being true is highly remote. There was advance notice, days advance notice given of my presence with Ejiofor to speak to Nnamdi about his legal case. This is not something that happened at the 11th hour. And so you have to ask, why did he just make up, which is clearly a falsity, to justify denying access to Nnamdi Kanu? We're not talking about doing anything in violation of law. It's trying to vindicate the rule of law, human rights law, and his rights as an individual, and also the rights of all Nigerians in living in a state where the rule of law prevails. It's not just arbitrary tyranny. So this was a very, very important meeting to have. It wasn't to undermine any system of law whatsoever. And so we were escorted out of the building and returned quite dumbfounded that there would be such a brazen lie told. Because it's fanciful to say you have somebody on special assignment. There are literally hundreds of other persons there that could escort us to the detention facility. Yeah. It's not like you need high energy physics training to walk down a hallway, open a door. That's pretty simple even for elementary school children. So I think that I have deduced, and I think Ejiofor would as well, that the Nigerians are frightened He said, good fences make good neighbors, you know, good boundaries make good neighbors. And so we need to go back and think about, well, is it time to re-examine, you know, the sensibility and the honoring of human rights, the right of self-determination, by questioning the boundaries that really are nothing more than a legacy of colonial powers in Europe that didn't have a clue of what they were doing when they drew the boundaries, and didn't have an interest at all in the welfare of those whom they were ruling over. They just drew laws everywhere, you know, in Paris and Berlin, whatever, and said, okay, those are the boundaries. Well, you can always renegotiate boundaries, and they say it's not novel. We recently witnessed in 2011, the South Sudanese, with a referendum, voted to secede from Sudan. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is perfect, but at least you don't have the conflict that was ongoing previously. And even before then, the United Nations organized a referendum in what was then called Southwest Africa, now Namibia, to basically secede from South Africa. So these kinds of secession movements are not unusual. In Great Britain recently, Scotland voted as to whether they wanted to secede. In Canada, Quebec voted whether they want to secede. These are fundamental rights of self-determination. And there's nothing that is treasonous or antithetical to democracy about having this kind of referendum determining the boundaries and fate of countries. You know, the international system is a lot like a petrified forest that never changes. It does change, and it should change in response to claims of justice.
The U.S. typically would have active position on the issue of Biafra agitation, but the U.S. has been unusually quiet, you know, in terms of international policy on Biafra. What do you think is responsible for that? You've been a high-level U.S. official before. What's going on?
Well, I think after 9/11, there was great ambivalence in the United States about any group that was called a terrorist organization, no matter how fanciful. And it wasn't just limited to Nigeria, Sri Lanka, and even in the Uyghurs in China. That was the tactic that the international community knew would get the United States to be worried if they identified any group as a terrorist organization once we declared war everywhere in the world and in the galaxy against terrorism. And I think that the United States, because it said that Boko Haram is terrorist, we need the assistance of the government to fight the radical Islam, and they don't really understand, you know, Biafrans are largely Christian, you know, there's nothing radical about, you know, their history or anything of that sort. And because Nigeria is not what I would call a top-tier issue, where you have people focused on it, because the United States at present is worried about Afghanistan, the Uyghurs in China, the South China Sea, issues with Chechens in Russia, so in Iran's nuclear weapons. So it doesn't get the kind of concentrated attention that you've discussed that would enable us to be more sophisticated about what's going on here. And that's why I think the Nigerian government was kind of frightened of my appearance, because in some sense, I'm here as part of my role to surface and internationalize the plight of the Biafrans, indeed all Nigerians living under tyrannical government. And that's what they worry about. They think they can obfuscate enough and then push it into the back burner area and say, oh, we're fighting terrorism, so we need weapons to fight terrorism, even though the weapons are diverted to killing civilians. And because there isn't high-level concentrated focus on the issue, they can get away for it, at least for a time. But they can't get away for it forever. You know, justice will not sleep. And that's, say, part of my mission here and back in the United States is precisely to make sure justice doesn't sleep when it comes from Biafrans.
But that did not apply to the Niger Delta militancy. Someone could say, well, it was because the U.S. was interested in oil, so they were all ears when the militancy was going on in the Niger Delta region. But the same is not applicable to the Biafrans now.
Well, there's some truth in that, to be sure. I mean, there's no doubt that the United States historically has blinked and squinted at countries that supply oil. I mean, most dramatically is Saudi Arabia. They even assassinate our journalists, you know, and we continue to sell weapons to Mbia, the Crown Prince. And everybody, the CIA has concluded, yeah, he was the one who orchestrated the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. But I don't want to suggest that